Yeah, this one, I had a hard time with this one. I think generally just because like the amount of times our parents have just like ingrained this in us is like always remember where you came from. Right? Because, like, to us, we've been blessed. We speak English. We have an education. I feel like in America, I think sometimes a lot of people take that for granted, right? But, like, they knew they were going to send us across the seas, and they knew, like, hey, you were an Indonesian kid. Like, so many people would be grateful to be in your spot. So, when I have a hard day or I just, like, don't want to do anything, I feel like there's just mom and dad, like, listen, you are ungrateful right now. Like, you got to fight for those kids that are still waiting for a spot back home.
That's very admirable. And I had a proud sister moment there. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Working Title Female Podcast. Today we have Bernice Sitompul joining us. She is a manager at a notable accounting firm, a 3-time NGCA Academic All-American, a former player for Loyola University women's golf team, and a former player for the Indonesian national team. Please welcome my not so little sister, Bernice.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Can't wait for our parents to watch this.
Full disclosure, guys, we tend to veer off in our conversation, so I'm not quite sure where this.
Yeah. Yep. So
Full disclosure,
hold it back.
Thank you for finally making time.
No, I'm excited. This will be good.
Okay.
I'm scared, but it'll be good.
You and I both. Well, let's start with the fact that I know your whole life story, and I'm going to pretend like I don't.
I know.
And we're like trying to be professional and all, but like it's
gonna come out. Yeah, like halfway. Yeah. You're like, I already know this story. Like,
yeah. So
speak faster.
Why don't you share a little bit about your story before golf? Not that I didn't know, but you're gonna have.
I was gonna say, yeah, we shared pajamas, so that was their story. Okay, so I started. We're 3 years apart, so our childhood was pretty like normal. We played a lot of sports, a lot of organized activities, played all the music. Our parents were like, we'll throw you in every activity possible and then we'll see where you land. So yeah, we did the whole thing, right? Like ballet, violin, piano, swimming, my God. But then I think, right, like, our brother was really good at golf. And then at some point, he left to the States and then it was just us two, and our dad who was a golf fanatic. And he's like, well, shoot, I don't have anyone else to, like coach, play golf with on Saturdays. So by default, I have 2 more children. So we'll force you into golf. And I'm kind of glad we did it together because I don't know about you, but like, I did not like it. Like, I was a fat child in hot weather and like I was mediocre at best at golf. So yeah, it was a rough first few years, but again, we did it together. So when was that? I think I was like 8, maybe?
Yeah, I was 11 when I first started like that golf thing that we yanked that's like resisting.
Yes, all the golf contraptions that are probably still in our living room today. Yeah, so we started playing, I was 8, and then eventually you moved to Florida. And then it was just me, dad, and mom when she wanted to participate. So that's how we started golf, and here we are today. So
I don't know if you remember. I don't ever remember. I got competitive. That's why I picked up golf. I was like, well, then, like, mom had made me pick between swimming or golf.
Oh yeah, but you were like really good at swimming. I was like mediocre at like anything we participated in. So I was like, oh, if she's picking golf, I guess I should pick golf too. So
I still remember my first shot in Rawamangun. I think Bania was there. It was Rawamangun. It was a pitching wedge. I hit the first ball. I missed the second ball.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But yeah, good old Rawamangun. That's where all good things started.
I like how you mentioned ballet.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. We had no business doing ballet.
I had the grace of an elephant. So I'm not quite sure why mom and dad thought it was a good idea to put me in ballet. How did you cope?
Honestly, like all my friends did it. And I feel like mom and dad were probably like, oh, this is feminine. They look so cute. So let's have them do this. Like, we were no like no, let's not force the issue here, right? It's like we didn't last very long, so golf was better. And it was like dad's expectations. I feel like there was a talent gap there, and I feel like we had to try much harder to get anywhere near that. And I think that, that panned out well. Like we learned a lot of things about ourselves during that process, but yeah, dad just spearheading that one. So we're grateful
We learned
today.
quite a lot. Yeah, we learned grit.
But
We learned to put things in perspective.
yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. When we were in Raomangan, we're like, oh, like dad's like, you have to finish hitting 250 balls before you can go home and eat dinner. I'm like, okay. And then we like lined up all the ball, or at least I did. I like lined it up and just started whacking balls because we're like, we got to get home. We got to get home.
Do you remember where like it got so boring that June started like making jokes and I started like chasing him with my driver because
Yes.
he
Oh
would
my
make fun
God.
of me. It's
I'm
like if you're
June.
and I like talking.
Yes.
So
You did. You
he's
came
like,
for the social aspect. I just wanted to go home. Yep. So he had his hands full. Jun's our old coach, by the way, for the viewers. God bless him.
why did you end up sticking up with golf, by the way?
I think, like, being the youngest, like, obviously, like, I really looked up to both, my siblings, and it was like, oh, when you guys were in America, I was like, okay, like, they used their sport to get to America. Like, I, by default, want to go to America too. And the only way to get there was this sport, right? So it's like, for better or worse, you're sweaty, you're chubby, like, just, you can do it. Like, they can do it, I can do it too. And it also helped, like, our parents just, whenever we're parents one day, I hope we have the same, like, foresight as them, as like, yeah, we're just two regular Indonesian parents, but we're gonna send all three children to the States somehow, some way. And then they choose, like back then, golf wasn't like, especially for girls, right? Like it wasn't like, oh my gosh, you're so cool, you play golf. It was like, I went to school and like my friends would be like, oh, let's go to the movies or let's have the slumber party. And I'm like, I gotta go play golf. They're like, what now? Like, that is an odd thing to play as like a teenaged Indonesian girl. But yeah, with our parents' support and like I had great junior golf friends, which also helped because it was like, okay, if I couldn't hang out with my school friends, I had great friends anyway. So like it was a good time with them. And then, whenever we were on the phone, like with you and Abang and Bradenton, I was like, oh, they're doing such great things there. Like I can do this. One day I can do this. Like, so it was a team effort and a lot of dreaming, but we got there eventually.
I like how you described a little bit about your friendship. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it kind of helped you go, grow to where you are?
Yes. So I'm going to name a few names here, but our dad was close friends with this man named Yoon. He's since passed, but his son, Bang Krishna, was basically an older brother to me because both of my siblings are on the other side of the world. So every single weekend, I think I spent like 20, 30 hours with Bang Krishna, just like hacking it out in Raomangun, Cengkareng, Esmeralda, God knows where. Like, he probably didn't want any of this either, but our dads were the best of friends. Like, and after golf practice, they would call each other and recap what happened at practice. So both of us were just like guinea pigs, right? And like my dad loved coaching both of us. And then outside of Bang Krishna, I had, Karetno was like an older sister to me. And like, again, like her parents were super tight. So it's like, let's get our children together and just practice all weekend long. And then I was lucky enough to be invited to be part of, I don't think they have this anymore, but they used to call it BCIOG. It was like the Bank Commonwealth Institute of Golf in Jagorawi. So shout out to Jagorawi because that was home base for a long time. And I got close with like the girls and boys that were part of that junior academy. And it was just so fun. Like after school, I would actually be excited to like see my friends and practice. Like, it gets dark in Indonesia at like 5:30. But then we would go to the chipping green because like all the members are done playing and all. And we would just chip in the dark and play all these like ludicrous games. Like, oh, if you don't get closer to the pin, you got to run around this practice screen like 13 times. Thank God these members are home because they do not know what these kids are up to. But you learn a lot doing that. And like, it was so fun. Like it didn't feel like work, you know? So yeah, great support system. We battled together. You know, we were competitors, obviously, but when it was practice time, I was like, all right, we got to get better together. So let's play.
How do you build a competitive but friendly nature in that sense?
It's tough. And especially like, you know, this for like females, I feel like, you know, when you get competitive, like it's, and I don't know, like I appreciate so much how all guys, I feel like can turn off that switch so quickly. But for whatever reason, like females just get like incredibly competitive. And maybe it's also like the Asian culture. You don't really show it, but like when you were, you're like, no words exchanged. Like, I don't care where your ball goes, I'm going to mine. And which is like awful to say, but like you're thinking it. Everyone's thinking it. But like, I feel like all the girls were very humble. Like I played with a lot of very like talented, and to the state, right? They're pros. They're very, very good at their sport. So like at some point you just got to learn like, hey, these girls are also really damn good at what they do. So like, you know, just get with it, like appreciate that you have competition and learn from them.
Well, I mean, that's such an important aspect of sport, right? You build friendship, but at the same time, you're balancing between, okay, I'm friends, but
Exactly.
I have moments where you're not
Exactly.
my
Yes.
friend.
Yes. It teaches you a lot of humility because you're like, wow, like, I hate to say this, but that shot you hit, like, I want to learn that too. Or like, how did you do it? And then you become friends too, right? You teach them, they teach you, you get better together. I feel like we didn't have like America, right? Like you have high school golf, like you have that team aspect, but like in Indonesia, you only play individual golf. So it can get kind of like lonely sometimes. So I feel like any opportunity you get to like hang out with other like girls or boys that like, you know, you can learn from, you can cheer on, like you kind of latch on to that too, which is why it was so fun for me to be part of that junior academy, because that was really my only like team aspect.
So transition from junior golf, talk to me about your transition to the US.
So I think the funniest part, and some people might not know this. So like I moved, I know December 2011 to the States because, you know, both my siblings shared an apartment and it was like great free room and board, right? Like your scholarships covered it and mom and dad were like, hey, we can save on that. You know, we can send you to the States. So I was like, yes, okay, this is it. What people might not know is it is an interesting time for a 16-year-old to be living with two college athletes. One who is the only person that is barely 21 years old, who is also my legal guardian, and the other one who apparently takes classes on the other side of the planet, what seems like, and is always out doing her art projects till like 1, 2 a.m. in the morning. So somehow, you know, we managed, we cooked, we did school pickups. You know, you guys had to pick me up from high school because I didn't have a license, no car, no nothing. And we made it work. And I think that, you know, those few years were very formative years because we really did learn to do shit. Am I allowed to swear? We learned how to do shit by ourselves. Like, you know, we had our own little Christmas tree. We, you know, ordered food for Thanksgiving as a family of 3. And our parents, again, with the force, I don't know how they had the confidence to be like, yeah, my 3 kids are doing fine, you know, all 21 and under. You know, one is a teenager still, and somehow they are still alive. So we're good. Yeah. So they were empty nesters, fairly young as parents, I would say. So we moved, you know, all of us in the States. And what I had forgotten to, you know, I guess think about when I was moving is I was moving to Michigan. Both of you were at U of M, and you couldn't play golf year round like you could in Jakarta. It was hard because I was used to, you know, playing golf every single day and all day on weekends. But like come winter, it was like, well, you know, you could swing a club inside our apartment unit and like, you know, like my siblings would take me to the range. What was it called? Miles Golf at Ipsy, right? Heated range.
Oh my God,
like,
you remember.
Yes, it's coming back to me now. Yeah, so like whenever you guys weren't traveling or like you were free, like you would drive me to Ipsy, you would either practice with me or just sit in the car, right? Like, you know, you had things to do too. And then somehow I think the thing is like I like my siblings both played for Big Ten school. Like I feel like the people that were a little older than you, like, you know, like Bung Rory went to USC, Bung George went to Berkeley. Like we had only known like the schools that reached your ears from on the other side of the world, they were big schools. You had never heard of D2, D3, smaller D1 schools. And it was kind of terrifying for me because like when I moved to the US, you know, I can transparently say like my golf kind of like either plateaued or like degraded a little bit just because like I couldn't play every day and it wasn't something I was used to. So then like come like, you know, junior, senior year, I was kind of terrified because I was like, I acknowledge like I am not good enough to play at your guys' level, right? Like big schools, like huge expectations. So then I think it was just like a blessing from God that like mom met Jack, who was basically like our American dad. And you know, Jack's from Chicago, and the only school I had ever heard of in Chicago was Northwestern because that was a big school, Big Ten. And I was like, Jack, there's just no way. Like I need a full scholarship. I just can't. Like our parents can't afford it to move and stay in the States. And he was friends with the then coach at Loyola. And he was like, hey, like, let me make an introduction. Like, I think you'd be a great fit for this school, great fit for the program. So then he introduced me to Jason, who was our coach back then. And lo and behold, like they had a opening on their team. Like my game was a great fit for what they were looking for in a player. And I think what people don't know is, so I wasn't there for a full ride for sports. Like a good chunk of school, thank God, was like covered by sports, but I was also always an avid student. Like I really enjoyed school and I was good at it. So I talked to Jack, I talked to Jason. I was like, hey, like, you know, like the deal is like my parents can't really pay for much at all. So what can close the gap between, you know, what sports can't. So they were like, hey, you know, you can apply for this academic scholarship, you know, separate application. You're competing against regular students, but it's doable with your grades. So I was like, heck yeah, whatever I can do, I'm going to write second, third essay, whatever to close the gap to move to the States. So we did, and it worked out. And like, I think like growing up, a lot of the junior golfers, like maybe you even like, you wanted to be a professional golfer, right? Like, especially like you were at IMG, like that was like you were bred to like think that way. But for whatever reason, like I think growing up, even when I was like at my most competitive, like I never wanted to be a professional. So like, and that's why I found so much joy in school because I was like, oh, I'm actually good at something else. Like I really enjoy this. And this is an FYI to people who do want to pursue sports like collegiate sport, like do not neglect your schooling because it could be a backup as it worked out for me, but also like you need to juggle school and sports when you get to college. So you might as well try to like practice that muscle growing up because it is very important. And there is life beyond sports, you know, after college.
That's really important to kind of highlight. I think where our parents really helped me personally was to always say school is number one.
Yes. 1000%. Yes. I think, yeah, our parents always did say that. It was like, okay, like you got to practice hard, but somehow you got to also make time for those A pluses because it's like unsaid, but like expected. Asian parents, what can you say?
I think it's really important how you kind of highlight like golf is part of life. You were one of the top, if not the top junior player. You have things called transition in life. You move to
Yes.
one of the coldest states in America where
Right.
major shift. Not only that, you had barely legal guardians. Legal,
yes.
but barely legal.
But barely. Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to highlight also being realistic. We're forever grateful to Jack because he made the introduction and you were still a very good player. And I remember you got recruited by a few notable D1 schools, just didn't work out at the time.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And that's the thing is like, I think also like a general life lesson, right? Because like I always expected for myself to be, you know, big schools, like the expectations. It's like everyone has their own paths, you know, and you pursue what you want to pursue just because like you're seeing somebody live what seems to be like an ideal, like step A, B, C, like, oh, I want to do that too. It's like, no, you know, like everyone has their own story and you build yours the way you want to build yours. And, you know, you can pursue whatever you want to pursue. Just it might not look the way you planned it to look.
Yeah, that's really important. I'll circle back to that when we get to how golf plays in your current job. So, going back to that, I want to hear a little bit about your experience in college. And I think one of the things that I admire about your college experience is this lifelong friendship you've also created with a few of the girls
Yes.
that I am fortunate enough to meet. So, can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yes, college sports. Again, you know, it's still a D1 school, but smaller school. So we were incredibly competitive. You know, we did it's same structure, right? Like you qualify for your spot, like you practice your hardest, you gotta fit in school in between. But I feel incredibly fortunate that I got along with all the girls that were on my team. Like we had so much in common besides for just sports. Like I think that was the other thing too. Like everyone knew like there was life beyond the sport. Like you were preparing yourself for what's to happen after college. You know, like we enjoyed each other's personalities, sense of humor. You know, beyond the 4 or 5 hours or sometimes the 36 holes. So like the 12-hour days, like we actually enjoyed each other's company in the locker room, in the van. I feel like those relationships made those long days feel so much more, I don't know, fun. You know, it wasn't just like, let me show up to these people I call my teammates for 12 hours. And then after that, can't wait to get back to my dorm and like not see these people anymore, you know? Like we did a lot of like after practice, it was like, hey, let's cook dinner together in my dorm room or whatever, you know? And it was like, yes. And I'm still, you know, very close with a lot of those girls today. And, you know, being away from my family back in Indonesia, like they're part of my support system here, which is very important to build. So yes, there was a lot of relationship building and just like life building with them off the golf course as well.
Can you maybe share a story or two from your college experience that allowed you to transition to adulthood, or if any?
I think in general, I think like you can probably agree, like those 36 hole rounds, which happen way too often that we would like to count. I feel like you bond, and it's funny because like this also transitions to like corporate life, but like you bond over, I hate to say misery, but misery, because we both played in the Midwest, you know, like when it's like spring, which like University of Michigan, you could definitely afford to play a lot of tournaments in the warm, you know. We stuck to the local, maybe if we were lucky, like South Carolina, right? Like that was the one tournament where like we got to compete for a spot because we got to get warm here. We got to defrost. But for the most part, we played just in the Midwest. And spring is cute for people because it was like Easter, you know, the weather's turning. The weather does not turn till about June, okay? So we're playing in 30 degrees, hail for way late into the year, right? And when you're with them, like 8 layers, you're playing in winter gloves and you just can't feel your face. Like that builds so much camaraderie. Like I cannot tell you the amount of times where we're like sitting in the van and it's like thunderstorming and we are praying to God that it just keeps thunderstorming because we do not want to play, right? We would rather do homework than play golf, which says a lot. So yes, that's happened a lot over the 4 years when we were in college. And like, again, that's why we're so close because golf is great. We're competitive. We practice hard for each other, but like, honestly, could live without it.
What's your favorite go-to snack during those winter months while playing golf?
Trail mix. And those are deadly because you think you're just consuming a cute little, right? Coach buys you those little packs. You just keep, no. And then after the day's worth of golf, you've like housed 8 of those. And you're like, oh, that's like 8,000 calories. That's good. So trail mix though. Great snack.
Go-to drink during those winter months.
Sometimes in the clubhouse, if you're playing a really nice club, like they have hot chocolate and all those things. So like you take it at the turn, you know? But otherwise, you just gotta settle for water and Gatorade, which, like, cold Gatorade on a 30-degree day, not ideal. But, you know, hydration. Yeah, this is healthy. Yeah.
They have hydration tablets now where you can sporadically just control, right? Yeah.
Kids these
See,
days.
they
Yeah.
have it all.
Have
They
that.
have all. Tumblr wasn't really much of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like those.
You
Yeah,
just
I
reuse
just,
plastic bottle. Yeah.
yeah,
No,
I know that.
back then it was pretty ratchet. But we survived.
Worst thing you left in your bag, food wise or anything.
The banana. Every golfer has left a banana. And the worst part is, like, you put your golf bag in a van, right? And the girls would be like, "What is that smell? Like, there is something back there, and I don't want to know what it is." And then someone would always just fish it out. They're like, "Damn, guys, it was me." Like, I'm sorry, but it's always happened. Just smushed, and you would just play around smelling like a banana peel. It's classic.
Or a sandwich.
Yes, the old, oh yeah, like soggy. Yeah, that always happens.
And back then, you know how I am with Subway. So I
Yes,
would,
to this day, actually.
it hasn't changed much.
Yeah,
I love the way you guys are still very close. And, unfortunately, I don't have that kind of friendship based on my team.
right, right.
So it's really admirable to see it till this day, like a
Yes,
decade plus after.
very fortunate. Yeah.
Okay, so you finished college golf. You obviously have an impressive resume. So how was your transition from golf to the real world?
I was excited. I think so, like in college, which is another thing that, college athletes will realize, like, you have your academic advisor who talks to you about what you want to major in, and it can go one or two ways, right? It's like, I am genuinely in support of what you want to pursue, or let's make sure this major doesn't get in the way of your sports. So I think you have the perspective of a big school where sports is your life. So you probably have a very different perspective, but, like, my academic advisor was like, literally, the sky's the limit. You pursue whatever you want to pursue. Like, Chicago is a city with so many job opportunities. So, and I was like, for whatever reason, I think because, like, I always wanted to work, I don't know, a corporate job. So I was like, by default, business school, let's pick something there. And I rotated through a couple options. And then eventually I was like, what's practical? How can I start making money? I was like, accounting. Let's do the driest major on planet Earth. Let's settle for accounting. So then, everyone, I think for what, people who major in accounting, I think they knew there's this thing called, it's an accounting license. It's called the CPA license here. I think they're equivalent around the world, but, like, you knew that you needed to graduate with an obscene number of credit hours in order to sit for your accounting license. So, like, a couple of girls actually on my team were accounting majors, and they knew, like, hey, we got to sit for extra schooling outside of the 4 years in order to sit for this license. But, like, I think for me, it was a little different just because, like, we're international, like, you have a couple options, obviously, right? You can pay out of pocket, get a student loan, but, like, us as international students, we weren't taught about, if you're financially blessed enough where your parents can support you, that's amazing, right? And a lot of people do that. A lot of people also take out student loans, but for international students, the barrier is very, very high to get a student loan. And, like, we well understood, like, our parents were not in a space to be able to co-sign or do things like that, and asking our parents wasn't even an option. I feel like we were very self-aware to understand, like, they would have said yes, which is because they are incredible parents and somehow, but we were like, no, not realistic. So we got to figure out a way. So I knew, like, hey, I need to start making money because in order to pay for this extra schooling, like, we got to somehow, figure it out. So I started my career at Ernst & Young, and that was kind of an adjustment because they have this thing called a busy season, as in public accounting, where you work about 80 hours a week, which, like, honestly, those were very, very, to people who have heard nightmare stories about public accounting, it's true. it's not just stories, it's reality. But you build so much. First of all, the people you start with, like, they will be your connections for the rest of your life. Because again, connecting back to that golf story where, misery loves company and you are just like sitting in a room for 80 hours and just grinding together, there is something to be said about that, because you can't help but laugh, right? Like you are not doing, you're not saving lives, but here you are, 80 hours on a Sunday in a conference room trying to finish this audit. So I learned a lot. And I think connecting like life and sports, like the amount of character, like the things you learn about yourself on a golf course or, whatever sport, like that really does, I feel like, get accentuated when you move, if you do pursue a life outside of sports. Like, I think it's so valuable, the lessons you learn on the golf course, because like, yeah, on the golf course, it sucks when you're playing crappy golf and you still got to tough it out for like 12 hours, or like you don't want to practice. Same thing when you show up to work. It's a Saturday. All your other friends are like out drinking or doing a brunch. And you're like, nope, gotta roll into the office. Gotta get this done. Like, it is so applicable. When you're younger, you don't understand. You're just like, my parents told me this is gonna be worth it one day. It is. It's worth it. Grind it out. Like, there are a lot of lessons you learn playing a sport that you wouldn't have otherwise. So as much as you learn on the job, all that like character building that you pick up on the golf course, like it's a lot easier to do that when you're playing a sport that you love. Dual purpose, right? So sorry if I went on a tangent there, but yeah, that was my adjustment to the corporate life.
When you finish those audits, is there any moment when you're working that you're like, there are moments where you're like, thank God I learned this from golf, or something along the lines of, oh wow, okay, I found purpose through that?
Like, I think generally long days, especially like, when you're moving from like an associate to a senior to a manager, like even technically, right? Like there are a lot of things you're unprepared for, but like, it's a learning curve. And it's the same thing as golf, right? Like you want to learn to hit it longer. You want to learn how to hit a fade. Like it's always a pain in the ass when you're first trying to do it. But like at some point, like you look back, you're like, that was painful. I'm going to acknowledge that. But like, it feels so good to like, wow, I've grown as a person. Like I've grown technically. And like, and then you like, in public, like you get to teach your juniors, they're going through the same thing too. Like you see that and I'm like, I have been in your shoes. I'm going to try to teach this to you and make it as painless as possible. But just so you know, it's still going to be painful. And like that determination and that like discipline that you pick up on the golf course, like it carries you so far.
Were there moments when golf has helped you during your career? Because
yes,
that there's a saying, obviously, golf is a sport for the business world.
100%. Yes. So at EY, I think after college, right? Like I would have been very okay not play. You went through exactly the same thing. Like I would have been okay not touching my clubs like ever again. Right? Because I was like, I've had enough of this. I've dedicated enough years of my life to this. And then you join the corporate world, which like it's very different now because everyone's like, golf's so cool. Like you're expected to, but like you join the corporate world and then everyone's like, man, I played on Saturday. Like I love this sport. And you're like, are you serious? This again? Like we're back to people talking about golf. Like, and it's not something I thought about really in college. Cause like, I guess like dad, worked a corporate job and he sometimes played with his golf friends. But like, for me, it wasn't something like I put like 2 and 2 together where like this could actually be really beneficial. So like at Ernst & Young, they had a golf like club where people would just like, hey, like we'll put, 5 groups together. Like it was a networking opportunity. So I started becoming involved in that because the guy who ran it, like I befriended him. And like I got to meet a lot of really cool people through that opportunity. And then, at my current role now, I feel like there were definitely times where like, let's say like they wanted a female representative, to like go play at an outing or like meet a client. They're like, hey, a managing director would be like, I either don't have time or I just like, I don't really play golf. So like, would you want to step in and just like meet the client for us and, have a good time with them? And I'm like, this is work. Like, yeah, okay, this counts. And again, like today, right, you're playing for sheer fun. I'm going to caveat that and say sometimes, like, you get a little competitive, or like if you don't, the shot just, you didn't execute the way you envisioned it. You're like, what the hell was that? And then you realize, the last time I practiced was like 97 weeks ago. So yeah, it makes sense. It didn't happen, But yeah, now you play for fun, and it's really different, I would say. Like, you show up when you want to, you don't show up when you don't want to, and it is a great sport. You learn so much. You're still learning about yourself, and you get to meet, a lot of really interesting and successful people on the golf course.
Can you share a few tips, or like 5 tips for people who are interested in golf and maybe would want to use it for business?
Yes. I would say first thing, come into it with an open mind. A lot of my, I would say, like, girlfriends who have wanted to pick up the sport, they are very, type A business people, like corporate people. So they just expect, like, if I put in 8 hours or X amount of hours into this and just keep whacking this golf ball on the range, like, I'm going to get good, like I will just keep getting better. Is not the case ever. So, like, take time and like invest in some coaching and invest, like, just realize, like, it's good with anything. Like, it's going to be a little painful, right? It's a very technical sport. And the beauty of it is, like, you don't need to be the strongest, the fastest, like, you can play well. You can put together a round without like playing perfect golf. And I feel like when I do play with like girlfriends, they're like, it takes that one good like strike, and they're like, okay, like, yeah, I shot 148, but like that swing made me want to come back more. So like, just, yeah, take it with a grain of salt. Like, it'll take time, but if you do like invest a little bit of your time and have fun doing it, like, you'll get there.
You have 4 more tips. That's 1.
Oh God.
Or if you just have that. Okay, give me 3.
I would say definitely invest in coaching, right? That was part of tip number 1. Like, I think it's because like you will spend a lot of time, and you don't want to spend time doing the wrong thing over and over again, because that'll only accentuate your problems. And, it's an expensive sport. So realize, it truly is an investment, but you can play the sport the rest of your life, and hopefully it'll pan out for your business. So, you'll be money ahead, hopefully. The other, I would say it is intimidating, especially if you're starting as an adult. It's intimidating to do it on your own. So find a friend who maybe they're already starting, but like, you can always get better, and you can get better together and make it fun, right? Like, let's go to the range, or let's schedule a lesson and then, get brunch after, right? You're playing the sport for fun. Like, yes, you want to get good and manage yourself out there, but again, sport is supposed to be fun.
Those are really helpful tips. And just to put it in perspective for those listening in Indonesia, what's a typical practice schedule like in the US, where it's more
Accessible. Yeah.
accessible?
People do not, I mean, it depends, I guess. Like, for me, and like, for example, like my old teammates who still, play casual golf these days, we do not practice. Like, there's a fine line, right? Like, at some stage when you're just picking it up, you do need to go to the range because you got to see what you're working with, all these things. But like, just getting out on the golf, because that's the fun part, right? Like, getting out on the golf course. Either you're enjoying good golf, or you're just taking in the views and you're getting your steps in and you're socializing. Like, I think it's important, like, just get on the golf course, right? You're learning, except that'll be, you'll hit a couple bad shots or a lot of bad shots, but like, I think like just getting over that edge and just like, hey, let's play around. Like, yeah, I don't think people actually, I mean, my fiance, Nick, I think boys actually, try to practice and hit balls because it makes them feel good or whatever. But like, girls just want to socialize and have fun and wear the cute outfits. So go do that on a golf course.
Was there any advantages, especially you being an ex-athlete and playing sports in college, and where you are now in business? You mentioned a few, but I want more exactly for you as a female?
I think, yeah, they're always, I'll give you an example, I guess. So like I caddied the summer after my freshman year. I caddied at a country club in the southwest suburbs here. And, when you meet these four random men on the tee and they don't know anything about you. They just know, you're there to help. And then they realize like, wow, like, you know a lot about like breaks and slopes and like depth and all these things. They're like, how'd you pick this up? So like when you tell them like, hey, this was my college experience. I've played this game many times before. They just get like very genuinely curious, like, how you ended up pursuing that, or like what made you want to pick up the game and things like that. So like it does make your story a lot more interesting, I would say. So you get that edge. And then, once you start talking to people about that story, like you're more inclined to ask them about like their life story. And then that's how like the conversations start, right? But yeah, for anyone that's looking for a summer job, I know it's tougher in Indonesia, but if there are opportunities to caddy as like a high schooler or what have you, growing up, oh my God, like great job. Great job.
You mentioned conversation. That's something very important to practice as you're transitioning into.
Yeah, yes, you are very, very right. I think that is actually a huge advantage as a golfer. It's like, when you're a junior golfer, you have opportunities to play people you have never met in your life. And you are spending 4 or 5 hours with them on this golf course. And to each their own, some people like to keep to themselves, but like I need a distraction and I cannot survive without at least a little something. So like you do learn to like engage in conversations or initiate conversations, and like that stuff is so valuable because, you keep doing it over X amount of years. And then lo and behold, you're in college. After college, you're still meeting random people to play golf with. And you'd be surprised like the level of networking that just like organically happens because you said hello. You started the conversation. You asked them, hey, what do you do? Where are you from? Outside of golf, what do you enjoy? Those are very valuable, I think, a proactive thing to do. What's interesting is like people don't initially start asking like, what do? You like bond over, that was a great shot. Like, how'd you hit that? Right. So like the most interesting part about these successful people, I feel like, is their personality, which is a lot to be said because like you would think like, I'm a VP, SVP, CFO, like I'd like to flex that, but like, I think it's very like, there's a lot of humility. That's what, like, one of the things I learned is like, there's a lot of humility in these people. And that's probably how they got to where they are today. It's like, these conversations, they always start with like, I'm so proud of my, my kids did X, Y, and Z, or like, I'm looking to get a dog, or just like life beyond what they do. And that obviously translates into what they do, because then you get to asking like, hey, what do you do for a living? And they explain like what they do, and you're like, I would have never like, obviously you see their character, they're well spoken, all these things. And it's like, that's actually very refreshing that you didn't lead the conversation with that. Nick and I, we're one of the younger ones at the club, and like, our parents aren't part of the club. So like people know nothing about us, and they're very genuinely curious how we ended up where we ended up, and like how we picked up the sport, XYZ. So I feel like sometimes I'm like, you look up to these people because one day, you kind of aspire to, achieve that amount of success as well at some point, but you realize that they're incredibly regular people with great personalities, and just it's far less intimidating than I thought it would be, I would say.
It's almost like golf is a major equalizer. The game.
Yes,
of golf.
that's a great, yes, exactly. Yes, you bond about there are so many facets to the game that just, at some point you don't even have time to talk about what it is you do, but, you talk about, that's the best part, right? Like everyone knows it's a difficult sport. So then you just get into this rabbit hole of like things I've been working on, and like, what do you work on? Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I like that. Let me try that on my next shot. And then, 6 hours later, you're like, I don't know much about you besides for like your common personality and like that you're trying to hit a hook shot. Like it's a great sport. Yes, it is a great equalizer.
Because you suddenly turn into you're playing a game. Like put any game in front of you, you forget we're all trying to figure this grip.
Yes, that is a great point. You like end up rooting for each other because you know how hard it was to do that. And sometimes, yeah, things happen by luck, but like you don't see that very often. So when you do see some random stranger hit a great shot, you're like, wow, this is a great sport. And you just see how happy they are too. So you're just like, naturally, you're like, I am rooting for you.
We're all struggling together here, guys. I feel like you've answered all my questions. So I just have like five, and then I have a few random ass questions just because I want to. All right. Ready?
Good.
These are quick answers, okay?
Okay.
Favorite club in the bag?
Putter.
Favorite golf course?
You know what? I would say because it holds sentimental value, Jagorawi New Course.
Knew that.
That holds a special place in my heart.
Yeah, the water on the right, all the creek and stuff. Right and left?
Yes, exactly. Right
left, and then go like right?
Yes, that's the 10th hole. It's like it's downhill a little bit and it's like straight woods. I have this like, I've played that course so many times with Dad, and just like the amount of like pray to God and hit and hopefully no ball gets lost, because he's like, golf balls are expensive, so you should hit this on the fairway. I'm like, yeah, Dad, all of 20 yards of fairway. I got it.
I still remember growing up, every time you hit a shot in the water, the people would come in and grab it.
Yes, they would come running. And the funniest part is like sometimes like we would buy used balls and you see your golf ball in the pack of 6 or whatever. And I'm like, I'm paying to buy my own golf ball. Got it. Good. Yeah.
Those are great memories. Okay. Favorite golf course snack?
I still think trail mix is my leading one. It's just so easy to eat, and it's like dangerous because there's chocolate and it's not healthy, but it's so good.
They say it's healthy, and then you get like yogurt bits and chocolate.
Yeah, exactly. It's dessert. Right.
Okay. A little on a better, more serious note, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Oh yeah, this one. I had a hard time with this one. I think generally just because like the amount of times our parents have just like ingrained this in us is like always remember where you came from. Right? Because like to us, we've been blessed. We speak English. We have an education. I feel like in America, I think sometimes a lot of people take that for granted, right? But like they knew they were going to send us across the seas, and they knew like, hey, you were an Indonesian kid. Like so many people would be grateful to be in your spot. So, when I have a hard day or I just like don't want to do anything, I feel like there's just mom and dad like, listen, you are ungrateful right now. Like you got to fight for those kids that are still waiting for a spot back home.
That's very admirable. And I had a proud sister moment there.
Oh my God.
What is the worst advice you've ever received? I feel like this one's gonna come from me.
Oh my God. No, actually it does not come from you. Although after this podcast, I'll probably remember one from you. Someone once told me that playing sports for a small school is a waste of time. So yeah, did not like that one. Yeah.
What is a lesson you learned the hard way?
Oh, this one's an easy one. If you're trying to build or pursue something, do it right the first time. Yeah. Much less painful.
What is a message you want to leave behind?
I always tell, I don't know, every time it's not profound, but like when I meet people at the golf course and I play with them for the first time, like for example, I joined Ladies League this year. There's a lot of new ladies I have not met or played with. But after the round, when they want to grab drinks with me or just like stay a little while to get to know me more, I always tell them like, because they always ask me, you were a college golfer, like you didn't play your best today. Like, are you okay with that? And I think my thing is, if you still want to play golf with me after this, I'm very happy with my round. That's it. Like, remember me for more than just my golf, because that is just a very minuscule part of who I am. And I think I'm on track. I'm on par for that, at least with Ladies League. So it's been good.
What's your hope for female athletes both in Indo and globally?
I think just to continue playing hard and, hopefully achieve some success along the way, because it is pretty, I was watching your podcast, like the girls that we grew up with, and they're still grinding it out and just like trying to pursue what they've always dreamt of. And it is very inspirational, no matter how things pan out, right? Success, no success. It is inspirational just knowing like how difficult it is to, I'm sure, like pursue that lifestyle, that career path. So like, little girls, little boys, like when they hear your stories, like, it doesn't go unnoticed, right? So I think a lot of people look up to you, big or small. And I think that, if you measure your success in trophies, it might not be as phenomenal as you thought it would be, but just know that there are a lot of people that find your life aspirational. So kudos to you.
This question is, I have a guest question.
Oh God.
It's not bad. What's your favorite go-to makeup for golf?
A waterproof mascara. My goodness, that is must have, especially when you ask like what's a lesson you had to learn the hard way? Waterproof mascara. Oh my gosh. Yeah. When it's like raining on the golf course and you like come off the 18th green looking like an absolute like raccoon, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. So
would you like to share a few that you'd recommend?
I mean, right now I'm just using, basic L'Oreal waterproof because that brand has seen decades under its belt. So, tried and true. But what was like the one, if you're feeling fancy, maybe do the Dior stuff that you taught me to use. No one uses, I know, we don't use that anymore. It's a lot of money for a tube of mascara. So just waterproof. Just waterproof. So Dior, if you want to sponsor us.
Yeah,
slide into
Dior.
my
You
sister's
want
DMs.
sisters. You answered all my questions. Thank you,
I know, it's
Bernice,
weird.
for your time. It took me a
Yes,
month and
no.
a half to get to you.
But we made it.
We made
We're
it.
recording. Yes.
There's some amazing golden nuggets, and I'm sure that whoever listens to this is going to feel blessed listening to it. I certainly have some proud sister moments.
Oh, yay. No, thank you for having me. This was really fun. I hope mom and dad watch, and I hope they're proud.
Well, they'll be all over this.
Yeah, that's true. All your comments are going to be from like mom.
And the likes and the comments from dad.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
and all cousins.
Yeah, just family.
Okay, I'll link up Bernice's LinkedIn or whatever she wants to maybe share about her career or whatever. I'll link it up below on the YouTube, guys. Thank you so much for listening this far. It means a lot to do this with my sister, so this is equally as fun for me.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content. I will put that here. This is the first one I said that to. Bye, guys.
Bye.